Welcome back to American Nostalgia Garage. I'm Steve. I don't know if you noticed, but our 55 Chevy truck is missing some stuff. And today, we're going to fix that problem. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. If you're back for more 55 Chevy truck content, here it is. If you went back and watched our first video where we started doing this cross member, I mocked in our front suspension just to give an idea where the wheel's going to be. And it's time to actually put some front suspension in. Now I have to give you full disclosure, this time it's not going to be permanent either, but we are going to put everything in and make it a roller. What I'll do once I've got everything in and we get to take a look at it, the next thing that I'll do is I'll probably take everything back out. I'll put some like junky coils in it just to make sure that we don't destroy our brand new parts. I'd like to paint everything and then put it in for good, but right now I want to get everything installed so we know what's up. Now the first thing we've got to do is get rid of this old cross member, which if you watched the first video, you might remember I left it in here just to hold the frame rails in place. So right now the bumper is going to do that job because it's bolted up inside here. I've got some stuff to get rid of. This has got to go, although it's not really in the way for what we're doing right now. But this cross member is going to go, and I'm really was trying to prevent having to cut it in half and remove it that way. I really like to keep it in one piece just in case like it's worth anything, or I can help somebody out who might need one or something in the future. I don't know, but I don't know by looking at it that that's gonna work. So I'm gonna start by doing our little cut and rivets trick and get this thing at least released from the frame, and then we'll try to figure out how we're gonna get it out. So here's how I cut the rivets. I just cut them in a star and then I basically knock them off. So we got the star pattern in there. Now I'm going to just chisel it off with the air hammer. It's a bit of work, but it's got to be done. So let me do that about 157 more times. I lost the fight. I ended up having to cut the thing down the middle. I'm really upset about it, actually. I really wanted to save it, but it really came down to, in order for me to save that, I would have to start cutting other things out of the car. Like I'd have to cut the radiator brackets out and then bolt them back in, which I don't want to do. So it really came down to either I cut the piece out or I continue cutting into my truck, which I didn't want to do. So I lost, and it took a while. It's like a couple hours later, and I'm soaked, and it's 1,000,000 degrees out, but it's out. I'm gonna take a break. I'm gonna dig out all the fibers out of my chest from all the exploded cutoff wheels that I just used, and then we'll get back at it. All right, got a fresh shirt on, feeling motivated. The next thing that's got to happen is actually has nothing to do with any suspension parts. We still have to modify the frame and C-notch this area because the rack boot is going to ride in and out of this area here. So we got our center line of our cross member here, our 20 7/8 mark from our previous cross member install. We're doing a Mustang, like a Fox body Mustang power rack, and the measurement they want for that is 5 inches from the center line of the cross member forward, and that's going to be the center line of our C-notch. So essentially the center line of our C-notch is going to go right in here. I'm going to outline this and then cut the frame. All right, I used our C-notch to actually shape the line that we need, and now I can start cutting. One thing I've got to be mindful of is the boxing plate is on the inside. We're going to have to cut through that also and then weld to it. But that'll give it a bunch of extra strength in there. So, not exactly sure how I'm going to do this, but I think I'm just going to work at it with a cut-off disc. You know, I'd really like to use a hole saw, but I don't feel like paying 40 bucks for one hole saw to use for 2 holes. And how often do you have to drill a 5-inch hole or whatever that is? It's 4.5-inch hole. So I'm just going to do what I got here. Paused my doo-wop music to give you an update. We are almost ready to install our front end suspension parts. Before I do that, I have to spend some time with some sandpaper, a little bit of acetone, and some tape to get these things ready to spray some paint on and get them installed. So I'm going to turn my music back on and turn my brain off and just clean all this stuff. Alright, well, we did the most lackluster tape job that you could ever imagine, and we're using a dirty broom to basically clothesline our parts, and we're going to throw some really cheap paint on it. You know, you can just expect the best possible outcome considering all those things. So let's get started. There's the finished product. Came out pretty good. Although I, metaphorically speaking, painted myself into a corner because we painted. But now everything is tacky and I can't mount any of that stuff on the truck. Yes, I knew this was going to happen. And I probably could have planned around it, but I didn't. Basically, we painted it now so that when we're ready to final assemble everything, it's ready to go on versus having to be pulled off and be painted. All right, so I'm going to probably let that dry overnight, and I'm going to get back to some dad duty. It's a holiday weekend, 4th of July is tomorrow. I'm going to try and bang out the rest of my work tomorrow with some free time, but right now, time to be dad. All right, welcome back, guys, to the best day on earth. Today is July 4th, which is America's birthday. Best country in the whole wide world. So a lot of what you're seeing probably makes sense then. So now that we've gotten past all of this, today is the day. We're slamming all the parts on. Let me give you guys a quick glimpse of all the stuff that's going on today, and then we'll get started. All right. Here is the Fox Body Mustang rack. This is a 79 to 93 rack, I believe, power. That way we have power steering. Some outer tie rods that I picked up. Got some bushings and hardware to install this stuff. I have some rack extenders, which I'm not sure I'm going to need yet. I've got all the hardware for the lower control arm and upper control arm. Some hardware that I bought there just to mount the rack that I don't believe I got when I bought the car. Some dust caps. In the box I got bearings. See there. I have 2-inch drop spindles. I believe that's what they are. Some dust boots and stuff. Then I have our tubular control arms, upper and lower, our disc brakes, the brackets that go with it, our calipers, and then the star of the show here is these Bilstein coilovers that are going in, and I'll show you how to put the other one together when we get to it. So this is going to be our buffet today, things to pick from. Except we're going to be the fat kid at the buffet and we're going to eat it all. So all of this is going on. All right, now we're going to do our lower control arm first, just because that's kind of what I feel like doing. This right here I believe is for a sway bar link, and to my knowledge that goes forward. So the control arm goes in this direction. It's got this 9-foot long bolt that's going to go all the way through the whole thing. Now, I don't know why this bolt is so long. I don't know if something's supposed to go on the end of this or not, but I suppose we'll find out at some point. For now, I'm going to leave this loose. We're not ready to tighten it up anyway, so we'll leave that loose for now. But it moves up and down nice. Happy with that. To my knowledge, there is no difference between the left and right upper control arm. I believe it's symmetric. What I will say is that this side has to go down. So if you end up turning this at some point, make sure that the knurls go down, because they're supposed to grip here, just so you don't lose your alignment over time. Now this one here is a little bit weird, because the upper control arm goes in these square slots here and has these special shaped bolts. If you can see, this hole right here is not shaped like a circle or a square. It's shaped to take this specific bolt so that the bolt doesn't turn, because you can't really get in here with a wrench later on. Now I'm going to leave that loose also for now. Also need to remember to put in my Zerk fittings here in the control arms. I still have the tape on here. Okay, so I'm noticing something now that I'm looking at it that I have a problem with here. I don't know if I'm missing a piece or if I just have the wrong parts or what, but the top of this coil over here is a eyelet. I don't have an eyelet up here. I have the standard like shock stud with a bushing and then a bushing on top, the whole bushing sandwich. I don't know if there's an adapter piece to run these or if this is just the wrong piece. You got to remember, I got this truck and this kit all secondhand. Obviously, can't buy this truck new, so that makes no sense that I said that. But I got the front end kit with the truck secondhand, so no instructions, I guess stuff missing or whatever. This box that this came in said front coilover. 10-inch spring, front coilover. I'm guessing now that that's either incorrect or it's incorrect for this car. Maybe it's a front coilover for $5 million AC Cobra. I don't know. But I don't think it's for this. So I've got to go back to the drawing board a little bit. I do think I have other parts inside the garage that may fit this, like a stock spring and shock, but it's not a coilover, so already some disappointment. Before I go get those other parts and see if that's what we're dealing with, I'm going to throw on our spindle just loose. All right, now I'm going to throw a boot on here on the lower control arm. I'm going to grab a castle nut, put our spindle on. Now there is a little spacer I think that goes with these. They give you this big thick washer, but I also think that there's something in here, believe it or not. I believe that these spacers here go on the lower control arm. I'm gonna leave them here for now and leave them off because I'm not sure and I don't want to just start putting parts all over the place. I am going to put one of these washers though. Now I don't know if you guys can see it in here, but do you see this cotter pin hole? It's actually below where I'm not even tight on this yet, this castle nut. And as you can see, I can turn this even with the cotter pin in. So that's why that spacer goes there. So now we've definitely proved that that goes there. It gives you the extra height so that the castle nut itself will actually still lock into the cotter pin. You guys call them cotter pins or cotter keys? I call it cotter pins, I think. We're just going to throw this in now since we know that's where it goes. Also finding out that you probably, I have to check when I start tightening it down, you probably don't use the washer and the spacer. You just use the spacer. Because I'm noticing now it looks like I don't even think I can get the cotter pin in. So I'm not sure if I need to do the top with a spacer also, but we'll find out. Also guys, it's the small things that count. This was just a well thought out idea. The 45-degree Zerk fitting. That way you can actually get to it and get a grease gun on it without snapping your fingers off or spending the entire afternoon cursing underneath your car. Alright, a trip back to the basement where the parts were has netted me, well, I got parts now. It ain't the parts I want. You know, like a disappointed kid on Christmas. It's just like when I didn't get my Red Ryder double action air rifle. Anyway, it's hot again today. I'm barely breathing. I can't find the air. I don't know who I'm kidding, imagining you care. Let's just get back to what we're doing. Alright, well the good thing about this setup is it's simple. There's a rubber hat that goes on the top. This shoves in from the bottom down here. The shock goes through the middle and gets a bolt on top and a bolt on the bottom. Here's a good example of a do as I say, not as I do thing. Don't do this. Coil springs are very dangerous, and to have a coil spring chained up to the suspension with one grade 1.5 3/8 bolts holding the chain together, this isn't the best way to do this. It is going to work though. I got to rotate the spring a little bit. It didn't sit the pigtail into the little pocket there. Alright, you can tell by how the jack is that this is very safe. Got our upper control arm slot T-bolts tight. I did tighten up the ball joint nuts, the castle nuts, and I got a cotter pin slid in there. They'll be able to get out later. The chain did destroy my paint job, so I'm going to have to repaint the control arm a little bit. But that's in. I think I'm going to try and slide the shock in while I have it like this. Alright, our shock doesn't want to slide in, so I'm actually taking off some material right here. I don't know that I'm supposed to have to do that, but I'm doing it. Alright, now let's slide it up here. Get our bushing, washer, nut. And for these, it gets these really long bolts that go all the way through everything and thread to the other side of the control arm tube. These bushings I like to tighten down until the bushing itself is about the width of the washer that it's above. Like that. I don't know if that's right, I don't know if it's wrong, but that's what I do. Here's something that could take a little bit of explaining. I mean, if you're like me. I must have done 10 minutes of this. Before I realized that it goes like this. Now if you can't see from there what I'm doing, I was doing it wrong. So let me show you how these go on. So this big boss here goes to the back of this caliper bracket. And then there's a big bolt that goes through and threads into this bracket. And there's a bolt hole down here that uses a spacer in between the bracket and the spindle. Now the right way to do this is tighten this so that this boss is flat where it's supposed to be, and then tighten this lower bolt. But when you're done, it should look like this. Big bolt goes through into the boss, a spacer in between the bracket, and another bolt goes through. then the caliper can mount on here. Hopefully that way you don't spend 20 minutes staring at it like I did. All right, we're ready to pack our bearings and load our rotor up. This is the inner bearing, the outer bearing, and the seal. We're gonna pack our bearings. I bought one of these tools so I don't have to get messy. I'm tired of it. Let's see how it works. Okay, it works pretty good. Wow, okay, it works really good. Look at that. Nice. Somehow you get messy anyway. The right way to do this is with a seal driver. I'll just do it like this because, you know, it's us. Now I got to pack the outer bearing. Okay, that's a cool tool. I don't understand the science behind it or how it works, but it works. Look at this. 2 seconds. We got our inner bearing in there, got a lock washer, got our spindle nut. Now I'm going to tighten this up to seat it, back it off. That's about right there. Cotter pin that goes with this, we'll leave that for now because we're going to be taking it off, but there is a dust cap that goes with it. Now we've got our GM caliper, which is just going to slide over the rotor this way. As soon as I get the bolt out of the way. And then it's got the typical GM hardware, which is these threaded pins. Now I got to tighten that, but there you have it. There's the brakes. In fact, there's the whole setup. Almost. All right, well that's one whole side. I'm gonna bang out the other side because you don't need to watch it twice, and then we'll get into some steering stuff. All right, I skipped ahead a little bit here, and I got the rack in place, sort of. I had to buy hardware, and I bought the wrong hardware, so I can't really mount it exactly where it has to go. I also noticed that the lower control arm bolts there and there, they do have to go in from the front, I think, because the nut itself is too tall and it actually hits the boots on the rack. So not a big deal. I'm not doing it right now, so I just pushed the bolts all the way back. They're still sort of touching, but I can't mount the rack anyway with the hardware I have. But we can finish what we're doing right now, and I'll swap the hardware off camera at a later date. But for now, the rack is loosely bolted in there. I'm going to throw some outer tie rods on. Just like when you do your brakes, make sure you put this jam nut on first, just like when we do tube nuts on brakes, because you'll have to take the whole thing off if you don't do this. Now I'm just going to do a visual alignment here for now, just to get us in the ballpark. I mean, the rack's not even mounted, it's moving around, so there's not a whole lot I can do here. But I'm going to just visually get our wheel straight. Looks like it has to go this way a little bit. Now I just got to put the one on this side, and we're basically about done. There you have it. That's the Heidts front end kit installed. Really excited to have made this giant step forward. Front suspension, some steering. Yes, it's not finished. I have to go through everything, and basically I've got nut and bolt everything. I'm gonna have to swap the lower control arm bolts. Obviously I'm gonna have to do something with the rack bolts, and then from the rack to, you know, the whirly thing on the inside, spinny, we're gonna need that, right? So that's missing, but we have a roller. I can put stuff back on this and actually push around if I need to, and that was the goal. Now the next goal is engine, paint, wiring, all the other stuff. But hey, you'll have to stay tuned for that, because that's coming. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the channel. It helps me out. Hopefully I earn your subscription. Drop a like. Give me one of those if you have to. But whatever you do, as always, I appreciate you guys watching. American Nostalgia Garage.